I thought I would interject some comments. I was, just for fun today, I was watching, or rather listening to the Atheist Experience, episode 790. This is just an excerpt from the full episode. I was getting rather annoyed while I was listening to this. So anyway.
If it sounded that way.
I'm sorry, we get a lot of prank calls. Go ahead.
I happen to be a pastor and also a teacher, and it would appear that some of my 8th graders seem to have stumbled upon your TV show, and I have a bit of a beef with that.
You know, when I was a kid, I used to stumble upon the 700 Club and various other religious shows on TV that contributed to the programming of my young mind into thinking a whole bunch of things that were not true, and caused me to go along the path of, basically started me on the path of living in delusion for a huge chunk of my life. And, you know, what I find really interesting is there's all kinds of religious shows on TV, mostly Christian religion shows on TV, misleading children, but that's okay. Now, the Atheist Experience has this one little show. It's just one little show, and I believe it's in Texas. There's really not a whole lot of atheist shows on TV or on the radio, and this guy has a problem with the fact that some of his kids listen to his show, to this show. What about all the Christian shows that I had shoved down my throat when I was a kid? I had to watch. My mother made me watch.
Okay.
I have, in fact, this is more so for the listeners than it is for you gentlemen. I have some evidence that God truly exists. If you look at Psalm 19:1,
he says he has evidence that God truly exists, and the next thing he does is he pulls out his little book and says, if you look at this book, at this chapter in this book, it says ... What does that have to do with anything? You know, I have a book that's called, and I can even, what's nice about my book is I can even say who the name of the author is, which is better than most of the books in the Bible. You know, and this book is thick. It's real thick, and it's you know, it's been around a long time. It's got millions of readers. And it's called Watership Down, and according to Watership Down, you know, I don't have the book right here in front of me, so I can't actually say what chapter and what paragraph, etc., but, you know, God's name is Frith, and, you know, he has, I don't know if this is his son or if it's just a prophet of his, or just exactly how, I'm trying to say his name, Elaria, fits into it, but Elaria is, basically means enemy's thousand prince, and very, very good character that the rabbits have great reverence for. I'm trying to think of another word, but I wasn't getting it. So anyway, you know, and Black Rabbit is death, and I mean, there's this whole religion that Watership Down teaches, and you know, yes, it's told from the perspective of rabbits, but certainly if Frith cares for the rabbits, you know, on the earth, he cares just as much for humans, maybe even more, because after all, you know, we're more intelligent than rabbits. At least we like to think so. So yeah, you know, should I start quoting chapters from Watership Down and say this proves that Frith exists? Honestly, what is the difference? There isn't a difference. Lord of the Rings. I could quote Lord of the Rings, and that again it's an older book. It's been written by millions of people. Sauron is kind of, according to Lord of the Rings, he's like the devil. He's evil. He's, you know, I could quote that and say that proves that Sauron exists. So why is this guy quoting this book and saying that because of this verse in this book, it proves the existence of a deity? I don't quite understand how that makes any sense at all.
Heavens declare that the glory of God and the firmament shows his handiwork. And what that means is...
So it says that. Okay. And he's going to tell us what that means. Okay. And how does this prove the existence of a deity? Because this book says this, and it means this, so it proves that? Okay.
You go outside, you look at the trees, you look at the sky, you look at the ocean.
Oh, now we're looking at nature, and we're saying that that's God. Nature is God, and nature proves God. Okay. It's funny, but from everything they have discovered about nature, it's self-sufficient. It is. It would continue as it is with or without a deity pulling the strings and calling the shots. Come to think of it, it already does do everything without a deity pulling the strings and calling the shots. It's just nature.
You look up at the stars and the moon, and there is construction put in there.
Says
that
who?
was designed.
How do you know?
Says who? Because this guy's little brain can only come up with that as an explanation. It must be true.
It makes no sense that something so brilliant can just appear one day.
It makes no sense to his little peon mind, so God must exist. That's it. We don't understand it, therefore God. Yeah, okay.
Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Well, first of all, that's called an argument from ignorance fallacy. It's a logical fallacy. What you're actually stating is that it must be designed because you can't imagine that it could not be designed.
An argument from ignorance.
Yes, you don't know how it actually came about, and so you're assuming
like
that
Matt.
therefore your claim that a God did it is the viable option.
And there's a second fallacy here. You're only picking the stuff you seem to like, the beauty, quote, beauty of the stars and such. You haven't really talked about the parasites that are trying to get into your body.
The parasites that are trying to get into your body
and eat your brain right now.
They are all just as magnificent, even though they might be doing harm. They are also just as magnificent because they are there for a reason, sir. They are there to control a population so that the population of a species does not go crazy.
I love this guy. The parasites that were created by God, their job is to control a population so the population doesn't go crazy. Isn't that called birth control and abortion? Because if you're already alive and you get one of these parasites and it kills you, isn't that kind of like abortion? Because, you could have lived, but then you died because you got this thing. So God creates parasites that act as contraceptives and birth control, and yet we're supposed to not have birth control and contraceptives for women who don't want babies because God doesn't like it. And then he puts right into his complex construction that he's done, natural birth control and causes for abortion. Only if you want to call it abortion, because we're talking about people who are living and breathing. Oh, actually, are we talking about people, or we must be talking about animals, right?
Including humans?
Including humans.
Oh, okay, we are talking about humans. Yeah, so so abortion's okay in God's mind, even for adult humans. Kids, that are going to school, teenagers driving cars, adult humans carrying on, having jobs, having families. Abortion is not only okay for third-term pregnancies, according to God, but to everybody. Because everybody is susceptible to parasites which were created to control population, keep it from going crazy. Well, hey, if we're going to use God as an example of how we should govern what people can and can't do when it comes to abortion, I'd say, hey, anything goes. You don't like your spouse? Abortion. You don't like your parents? Abortion. Actually, no, that's not the way it would work. You'd have to pray to God and ask him to give them a parasite.
Of course.
Very good. That's a very good evolutionary argument. Thank you.
So,
It's not an evolutionary argument.
well,
There is design behind
It's
that.
Design's
Okay.
behind it, because George from, I think it's Pennsylvania, PA, says that there's design behind it, so there must be design behind it. Duh!
how do you know?
You can see it with your own eyes. All you need are eyes, and you can see the design is there.
That's not how we recognize design. I'm sorry. You don't just point
That's
at
how
something.
I recognize design.
And that's why we don't believe the same thing, because you don't understand how we actually recognize design, and you just
See
think
what-
that you look around and see it, and it is so. And unfortunately, that
People at my work must think I'm nuts, because I'm sitting at my desk with my headphones on and I'm laughing at this. And they're like, every now and then they're hearing me laughing. And I'm like, what the hell?
it's not the way evidence works. So when you call in and say you have evidence
Well,
for
I
God,
have evidence right here.
Oh,
Isaiah
evidence.
40:18.
no, sir. The
Do-
Bible.
He's quoting from a book again, and that's his evidence. You know, that's the thing that I have a hard time with Christians. Why do they think that? Why do they think that the Bible has any relevance whatsoever? Because their church says it has relevance. Okay, once upon a time, there wasn't a church, and there was just a bunch of guys who wanted to start a religion, and they wanted it to succeed over Mithraism, so they basically made it more compatible with more people than Mithraism, and thus caused the downfall of Mithraism. And so they invented all these things, and they came up with, this, well, using ancient stories, or if you want to call them ancient. I don't really think of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000-year-old stories that ancient. But yeah, they put together a book, and the new stuff is been, there. Most of it's cast-offs or recycled from pagan faiths that used to exist. The pearls of wisdom that's been basically stolen by Christianity, and they're trying to pass it off as their original ideas. Yeah, it's a book, and the church says this is this because the church wants this book to... and we're going to believe it because the church says. Okay. Right. But the church also says that the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price should have a great deal of authority too. And the Koran is another holy book that the church says should have significant relevance. And how many other religions are out there that are that have holy books that are supposed to that say stuff? I'm sorry, but why is one book supposedly more relevant than the others? Oh, that's right. The church says. Silly me. Okay. And Watership Down says rabbits. God is a rabbit named Frith. Okay.
The Bible is not evidence for the existence of a God.
The Bible is, in fact, evidence for the existence of a God.
And if he says it enough times, it's actually true. I think that's how theists think. If they say it forcefully enough, with enough emphasis in their voice and enough authority in their voice, and they say it enough times, then eventually everybody's going to believe that the Bible is in fact evidence for God. Like Watership Down is evidence for the existence of Frith. Yeah. I just had to have a rant. I was feeling it in me after listening to this at work, and I came home, but I'm like, I'm going to do something with all this. This going back to the whole character of God thing, too. This guy talks like there's such a thing as a God, okay? He's not showing us any proof other than what's in this book that he says proves everything. That's not proof. First, you have to prove that the Bible was inspired by a deity, and it's so erroneous and filled with contradiction and flaws. For example, the fact that Jesus of Nazareth, that's all in there, right? Jesus of Nazareth. Except Nazareth didn't exist in Jesus' time, and wasn't actually built until, like, I think it was like 200, 300 years after his alleged death. Oh shit, there's no Nazareth, and they're starting to ask questions about that. We better build a city and call it Nazareth. Make a big tourist attraction out of it. Oh, but we're supposed to believe that the Bible is the infallible word of God. Okay. Anyway, this is just me ranting. I think these people act like their way is the only way, and that if we don't believe what they believe, it's insulting and offensive, and we shouldn't let our children listen to anybody else's beliefs. It's like, I wish people would examine their own beliefs and research their own beliefs. And, you know, doesn't it matter to people if their beliefs are in fact true? How can you stand there and say, oh, but the Bible says, so it must be true? And how do we know that? That's the thing about me, is I was a Christian for a really long time, and then one day I just decided, you know what? I don't believe this is true, and I would rather know, and I'd rather know what the truth is. I'd rather not have deception, live my life with deception and false hopes. It was kind of nice thinking that, when I die I might see my dad again, and maybe I will. But if there's an afterlife, I can pretty much guarantee it isn't this rather offensive thing that's been dreamed up by the Christian church. Anyway, I have to go to my second job now, so thanks for listening if you have. Bye, Atheist Experience.